Rail sees a quiet corner and rushes to it. He stands by a middle-aged woman with a very pale skin, who is quietly talking to herself. He discovers she is blind and asking for a guide. "What's the use of a guide if you've got nowhere to go?" asks Rail. "I've got somewhere to go," she replies. "If you'll take me through the noise, I'll show you. I'm a creature of the caves, and I follow the way the breezes blow." He leads her across the room, and then they leave the crowd, who dismiss their departure as certain to fail. When through the door, the woman leads Rail down the tunnel. The light of the chamber soon fades, and despite her confident step, Rail often stumbles in the darkness. After a long walk, they arrive in what Rail judges to be a big round cave, and she speaks a second time, asking him to sit down. It feels like a cold stone throne. "Rail, sit here. They will come for you soon. Don't be afraid." And failing to explain any more, she walks off. He faces his fear once again. A tunnel is lit up to the left of him, and he begins to shake. As it grows brighter, he hears a non-metallic whirring sound. The light is getting painfully bright, reflecting as white off the walls until his vision is lost in a sort of snow blindness. He panics, feels around for a stone, and hurls it at the brightest point. The sound of breaking glass echoes around the cave. As his vision is restored, he catches sight of two golden globes, about 1 foot in diameter, hovering away down the tunnel. When they disappear, a resounding crack sears across the roof, and it collapses all around him. Our hero is trapped once again. "This is it," he thinks, failing to move any of the fallen rocks. There's not much spectacle for an underground Creole as he walks through the gates of Sheol. I would have been preferred to have been jettisoned into 1,000 pieces in space, or filled with helium and floated above a mausoleum. This is no way to pay my last subterranean homesick dues. Anyway, I'm out of the hands of any pervert embalmer doing his interpretation of what I should look like, stuffing his cotton wool in my cheeks. Exhausted by all this conjecture, our hero gets the chance in a lifetime to meet his hero, Death. Death is wearing a light disguise. He made the outfit himself. He calls it the supernatural anesthetist. Death likes meeting people and likes to travel. Death approaches with Rail with his special canister, releases a puff, and appears to walk away contented to the wall. Rail touches his face to confirm he is still alive. He writes Death off as an illusion, but notices a thick, musky scent hanging in the air. He moves across to the corner where the scent is strongest, discovering a crack in the rubble through which it is entering. He tries to shift the stones, and eventually clears a hole large enough to crawl out of. The perfume is even stronger on the other side, and he sets off to find its source with a new-found energy. He finally reaches a very ornate pink water pool. It is lavishly decorated with gold fittings. The walls around the pool are covered with a maroon velvet up, which honeysuckle is growing. From out of the mist on the water comes a series of ripples. 3 snake-like creatures are swimming towards Rail. Each reptilian creature has a diminutive head and breasts of a beautiful woman. His horror gives way to infatuation as their soft green eyes show their welcome. The Lamia invite him to taste the sweet water, and he is quick to enter the pool. As soon as he swallows some liquid, a pale blue luminescence drips off from his skin. The Lamia lick the liquid, very gently as they begin. With each new touch he feels the need to give more and more. They knead his flesh until his bones appear to melt, and at a point from which he feels he cannot go beyond, they nibble at his body. Taking in the first drops of his blood, their eyes blacken and their bodies are shaken. Distraught with helpless passion, he watches as his lovers die. In a desperate attempt to bring what is left of them into his being, he takes and eats their bodies and struggles to leave his lover's nest. Leaving by the same door from which he had come in, he finds some sort of freaks' ghetto on the other side. When they catch sight of him, the entire street of distorted figures burst into laughter. One of the colony approaches him. When they catch sight of him, he is grotesque in every feature, a mixture of ugly lumps and stumps. His lips slip across his chin as he smiles in welcome and offers his slippery handshake. Rail is a little disillusioned. when the Slipperman reveals that the entire colony have one by one been through the same glorious romantic tragedy with the same 3 Lamia who regenerate themselves every time, and that now Rail shares their physical appearance and shadowy fate. Amongst the contorted faces of the Slippermen, Rail recognizes what is left of his brother John. They hug each other. John bitterly explains that the entire life of the Slipperman is devoted to satisfying the never-ending hunger of the senses, which has been inherited from the Lamia. There is only one escape route. A dreaded visit to the notorious Dr. Diaper, who will remove the source of their problems, or, to put it less politely, castrate. They discuss the deceptively named escape for a long time, and decide to go together to visit the doctor. They survive the ordeal and are presented with the offensive weapons in sterile yellow plastic tubes with gold chains. "People usually wear them around their necks," said the doctor, handing them over. "The operation does not necessarily exclude the use of the facility again for short periods, but of course, when you want it, you must provide us with considerable advance warning." As the brothers talk themselves through their new predicament, a big black raven flies into the cave, swoops down, grabs Rail's tube right out of his hands, and carries it up into the air in his beak. Rail calls for John to go with him, and he replies, "I will not chase a black raven. Down here you must read and obey the omens. There's disaster where the raven flies." So once more John deserts his brother. The bird leads Rail down a narrow tunnel. He seems to be allowing him to keep at a close distance, but as Rail thinks he might almost catch hold of the bird, the tunnel opens and finishes at an enormous subterranean ravine. Casually, the raven drops his precious load into the rushing waters at the bottom. It's enough to drive a poor boy raven mad. Seeing the dangers of the steep cliff, our courageous hero stands impotent and glowers. He follows a small path running along the top and watches the tube bobbing up and down in the water as the fast current carries it away. However, as he walks around a corner, Rail sees a skylight above him, apparently built into the bank. Through it, he can see the green grass of home. Well, not exactly. He can see Broadway. His heart, now a little bristly, is shaken by a surge of joy, and as he starts to run, arms wide open to the way out. At this precise point in time, his ears pick up a voice screaming for help. Someone is struggling in the rapids below. It's John. He pauses for a moment, remembering how his brother had abandoned him. Then the window began to fade. It's time for action. He rushes to the cliff and scrambles down the rocks. It takes him a long time to get down to the water, trying to keep up with the current at the same time. As he nears the water's edge, he sees John losing strength. He dives down into the cold water. At first he is thrown onto the rocks and pulled under the water by a fast-moving channel, which takes him right past John downriver. Rail manages to grab a rock, pull himself to the surface, and catch his breath. As John is carried past, Rail throws himself in again and catches hold of his arm. He knocks John unconscious, and then, locking themselves together, he rides the rapids into the slow-running water where he can swim to safety. But as he hauls his brother's limp body onto the bank, he lies him out and looks hopefully into his eyes for a sign of life. He staggers back in recoil, for staring at him, with eyes wide open, it is not John's face, but his own. Rail cannot look away from those eyes, mesmerized by his own image. In a quick movement, his consciousness darts from one face to the other, then back again, until his presence is no longer solidly contained in one or other. In this fluid state, he observes both bodies outlined in yellow, and the surrounding scenery melting into a purple haze. With a sudden rush of energy up both spinal columns, their bodies, as well, finally dissolve into the haze. All this takes place without a single sunset, without a single bell ringing, and without a single blossom falling from the sky. Yet it fills everything with its mysterious, intoxicating presence. It's over to you. Copyright Peter Gabriel, 1974. This is a reading of Genesis's The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.